as you know, we've been studying the area of the brain, the hippocampus, for some time, many years now, and we believe its primary function is to provide information about where the animal is and where things are located in space, and how to get from one to the other. So it provides not only a spatial memory system for what you experienced in particular locations, but how to go from one place to the other. And we've recently discovered how that part of the brain, the hippocampus, actually does it by creating a signal which actually points in the direction of where you want to go. So we're quite pleased with that, and we're now thinking we need to go the next step. And the next step is something that we've been thinking about for a long time, and comes from the human patient research. We know that patients with damage in this part of the brain, the hippocampus, actually have not only trouble navigating, but have trouble remembering about events of the past that they personally experienced. They're called episodic memories. And to have an episodic memory, you need to not only know where you were in the past, and where you experienced an event, for example, where you had lunch yesterday and who you had it with, but you have to know that it was yesterday and not the day before or the day before. Yeah. So you need to have some sense of linear time. You need to know not only when you experienced something, but when you experienced it. And there are some hints from our colleagues that some of the cells in the hippocampus and areas related to the hippocampus are actually providing something like a time signal. And so we're very interested in whether that occurs. We're sure it must occur in human beings, because they show us that they have this kind of ability. But we're interested in whether an animal such as the rat also has this ability. And for a long time we couldn't understand why a rat might want to do this. Why does a rat want to know what it did yesterday? And we're now beginning to think it has something to do with foraging, where animals go to a particular location, get food there, and then go away, and then they have to know how long ago it's been since they've been there.
What is the most interesting thing for you in the human brain? What would you like to know?
So I think the Holy Grail, for most researchers, or certainly speaking for myself, would be to begin to understand things like thinking and particularly consciousness. There's a great gap in our understanding of the brain as a material organ, an organ that's not, it's much more complicated, but it has many of the same properties and depends on the same material as the liver or the heart or any of these other biological organs. And when we think about consciousness, and philosophers have thought about this for many centuries and millennia, it feels like something very, very different. It feels like it's an immaterial substance. And so we have great difficulty thinking about how something as physical as the brain, with all its neurons and their interconnections and the way they operate in time and talk to each other with action potential, how that gives rise to something which we experience and we all believe we possess, which is consciousness. So I think one of the great frontiers in brain research would be to try to understand, and it's not that people haven't tried to understand it, but to try to understand how you solve this very deep philosophical problem of how you can have an interface, or how between the mind and matter, or how, in much more concrete terms, the brain gives rise to these internal impressions, internal thoughts, internal experiences. And we still are not sure whether which parts of the brain are involved and how much there is localization, whether it's the whole brain operating together. It certainly looks as though consciousness is something which brings together many of the different functions of the brain. So there's some process going on in the brain which brings all this together, or allows all of these very disparate parts of the brain to communicate with each other and create this integrated picture that we have of the world, where not only do we have a spatial framework in which we exist, but we know that there are other people, and we have feelings and emotions, and we hear things and we interpret them as thoughts and language and things like that. So I think this is a very hard problem. It's called the hard problem.